This is the Horsepower Hour.
Hello and welcome once again to the Horsepower Hour, the only podcast with a salvage title. I am, as always, your host, Andy. Joining me, as always, other side, I forget the camera's reversed, is the illustrious, the Aquarius, the beautiful, and the gorgeous Koi Forticus and Masterson. My friend, how are you?
I'm doing great, man. Got the Hawaiian shirt on today, ready for the boogaloo. All this humid heat we're having here in Oregon. I've been sweating. Well, I can't say what I've been sweating like, but I've been sweating so badly today. It's been nuts. It's not even that hot, it's just so humid. So yeah,
I'm living in Florida
sweaty.
now.
That's how I'm doing. Sweaty.
I understand the humidity. You just have to embrace the suck. And speaking of embracing things, Mercedes Lilienthal, you're joining us today. We've been very excited for this one. It's been a long time in the making, and cannot thank you enough for being here.
Thanks for having us on the show. Thanks for having me on the show. I'm so used to having Andy on the show with me here on different podcasts, but thank you for having me on the show. It's a delight.
And you actually asked me that earlier. You said, now, am I bringing my husband on or what's going on? And I said, well, you can if you want, but it's just supposed to be you. And
yeah. Right. It's funny because a lot of the times when we do automotive minded things, whether it's trail runs or events or podcasts or radio shows, what have you, a lot of the times it is us. And I jokingly say, if you get both of us, it's double the trouble, but double the fun. So, I speak as an us because a lot of the times it is the us. So if it's not the us and if it's just the me, well, hopefully I still entertain.
Oh, always, of course.
Now, you two are definitely a power couple, but and obviously we love Andy on the show. It's welcome anytime. But we just want to pick your brain today.
Pick away. Have at it.
There's a lot to pick there. And if you don't mind, I think I'm just going to dive right into it. It's sort of like, having a big nose. You just got to really get in there. You got to dive up to the second knuckle, right?
Hopefully it's not with a COVID test, but yes. Because some of the times they're really, really far up there, but yes.
Tickle in the brain. So Mercedes, you've been an automotive journalist for a long time. And obviously, essentially having a power couple like you and Andy Lilienthal in the house. I mean, it just it makes sense for you to be in this industry. How did you get your start? Where did you start?
How long do you have for your time? People might think that I have been an automotive journalist and photographer, based in an automotive related field for a long time. It hasn't been that terribly long for me doing it full time. It's been a little over 4 years only. When I graduated in way back when in 2000 in college, I graduated with a fine arts degree with a concentration in interior design. I had almost a 20-year career as a commercial interior designer and project manager. During that time, in 2006, Andy and I have decided to move out to Oregon from the Midwest, and he got his job at Warren Industries, which is where he currently works now. It's a truck winch company. They make a lot of OE parts. They also do hubs and aftermarket bumpers and all sorts of stuff now. But that being said, I started at that time when I was in design and construction, I started finding my way onto different, planning my vacations around his trips, whether it's to Moab for Easter Jeep Safari or some of the Overland Expo events that were starting to just happen. I mean, nobody knew what overlanding was. It's what's overlanding. But that being said, as I started really developing a fondness for these 4x4 vehicles and where they can take you and the people that are involved, whether they're travelers that live out of their Mitsubishi Delica 4x4 van for 16 years, like, Pablo and Anno that do, or there's somebody that buys a ship box, truck and they're like, all right, this is going to be me. And I'm going to throw a sleeping bag in the back and, travel all over the country. I started really to get an affinity and a yearn to follow that passion even more. And in 2018, not like I'm counting, but in April 17th of 2018, Andy and I had a long heart-to-heart talk. And we said, you know what, if this is what you really want to do, if you want to switch gears, there's there's two hands. There's actually fingers with hands. There we go. Two fingers. Gotta love the virtual backgrounds. But in April 17th of 2018, basically said, all right, let's make a go of it and switch to being a freelancer and a full-time journalist and automotive-minded person and PR marketing, whatever it is that I decided to do. So it's been a crazy ride. It's been a very challenging, very rewarding, and very high-paced, which I loved every bit of it.
I love that. And how cool is it? I mean, Coy, could you imagine if your wife or my wife was like, you know what, I'm going to dive completely 100% headfirst into this thing that you love and are passionate about?
I can't speak for Andy, obviously, but it would be mixed emotion. The pride would be like insane. The level of jealousy, like, I think I could bring it down, but I'd be wildly jealous as well. I won't lie. But it's always amazing to see your partner enjoy success, especially in something you're interested in. Like, hell, why
And
not?
it goes on the opposite side though too. I mean, especially with having a safety net of, good job, of stability, of benefits. Oh my gosh, there's the B word, benefits, right? You've got money coming in, right? And
Insurance, yeah.
insurance, that's a huge thing. And then all of a sudden foregoing all of it, like literally all of it. And you had maybe one boss or maybe a few bosses. Now you have 30 bosses and all sorts of timelines and deadlines and people that are too busy and can't get back to you and late payments on, people that should be paying you on time and this and that, and just all sorts of stuff that you need to micromanage. So there's a lot of challenge that goes with it too. So there is a lot of the lights, camera, action, so to speak, and the celebratory happenings of the wins that I may have or Andy may have, because he's also a journalist on his off hours. He writes for different notable publications as well. But there's also a whole host of long hours, eye strain in front of computers, culling thousands of photos after an event. I think I've had 7,000 to 9,000 photos after a week-long event at Easter Jeep Safari, for instance, going through all of that stuff. And there's a lot of behind the scenes work that goes into all of that, maybe glitz and glamour that some people might think of me all be.
Okay. So this is totally off topic, but I have to ask you a quick question. Have you ever found a UFO hiding in the background of any of your photos?
Not a UFO, but I've had some really interesting things that I've gone through, and I've started calling photos and went, oh, but that's really odd. And I have to Photoshop that out. So yes, but not a UFO, but there's been some questionable things or people.
Is that guy taking a leak in the background?
I was about to say UFO, drunk guy taking a pee off of a rock. I mean, it's kind of
nothing quite that glamorous, but actually with the concepts run or the concepts event with this last Easter Jeep Safari, and the journalist will remain nameless. He's a good friend of ours. I was going through and he was taking one of the concepts. I think it was the Bob concept, the 2022 Easter Jeep Safari Jeep concept on the course, right in the off-road course. And I was taking a photo and I was zooming in and just kind of editing the vehicle. I saw that the way he was holding his hand, he was flipping people off with his left hand and as he was driving, but it wasn't meant to be. It wasn't like, egregiously just flipping somebody off, but it just happened to be. And I had to look really closely. I sent him a snippet and I said, hey, Brian, hey, what's this going on here? He's like, I have no idea. So as a photographer, especially somebody that uses a lot of their own photographs, because that's one thing I really try to do is I pride myself on using my own photography first and foremost, if I can, then supplement with media, the auto manufacturers or other medias if need be. But I have to be very careful to see what I put out to the world, make sure that they're not flipping anybody off or peeing off a rock or something like that. So, yeah.
Does that make it easier for you to publish or get published when you're using strictly, specifically all your own media?
I don't think so.
No
For
difference?
me, not, I don't know. That's a good question. For me, I think, there's such a search engine optimization craze out there. I mean, everybody knows it, right? SEO, you got to get the first page of Google. You have to be the first outlet out. You got to be on time, on point, have the right keywords, all of that type of thing. I like to submit my own photos. I think that it adds genuineness to articles. I think it adds something different, a different flavor. And that way it helps progress me as a photographer and a journalist, just an overall journalist. Is it double the work? Yes. Is it double the time? A lot of the times, yes. But there are very notable photographer, journalist friends of mine that do the same thing too. I choose to do that, but whether that helps me gain outlets or gain article opportunities? Maybe, maybe not. It could work in the deficit. I mean, it slows me down potentially for me saying, okay, I have to go through 5,000 photos to find the top 10 for the best of this and this and this, but I have to get it done in 5 hours because the show just ended.
Yeah.
It can swing both ways. So, yeah.
Well, correct me if I'm wrong, Coy, but don't you think we're starting to move out of the era of the super clickbaity stuff? The first one that comes to mind is Motor Junkie. I don't even follow him on Facebook anymore. I don't follow him on any social media because it's all just this terrible clickbait, these horrible articles that are written by people that clearly don't know anything about cars. Are we going to start, in your opinion, seeing an emphasis on slower articles, media that are higher quality? Coy?
Yes. Oh, me. Yeah. I hope. Like, one can dream, right? It's hard for me to believe that it's going to go too far that way, because every time I click on something, there's just another render, and it's like, this is what Toyota could be planning. This is what such a could be. And it's like, they could be making more Toyota branded diapers. Like, I don't know what they could be doing. Like, it's irrelevant. And that's one of my biggest disappointments with online media stuff is it's a lot of what they could be doing. And it's like, we can all play that game. And then there's even a nice way to do the could be's, but it's like a lot of times just wild grandeur guesses. Drives me nuts.
Now, Mercedes, surely you can back us up with that. As a matter of fact, Coy and I recorded last week, and we played a game of Automotive Journalists where we were just like, all right, let's pretend that we're auto journos, and we're going to take this news about a potential Toyota MR2 hybrid and just sort of run wild. And you know what we realized at the end of that exercise is that we're too practical. We're just not built for being automotive journalists in that way, because we were actually like trying to put logic to what we were talking about. And if you want to make clickbait, that ain't the way, son.
Right. Yeah. Boy, I could talk about this for about 3 hours, at least in its entirety. So just sum it up in a couple of sentences. Oh gosh, you have to appease the robots, I guess. The robots are important. Algorithms important. SEO is very important. All that type of thing. But there's also something about quality journalism and something about making sure that the statistics and the information that you have and the impressions that you have are correct when you send them out and when they publish online, especially online. In print is a different animal. In print, it could be a few months in advance or even a quarter in advance if it's a quarterly publication. That's a different animal. But gosh, I've seen different outlets where all of a sudden, and maybe some of the ones that I even write for that, might have misinformation in it, and you go, oh crap, or whatever. I mean, if I find something that I publish and it's incorrect and I have an opportunity to go back and say, hey, we need to fix this. I realize that there's something that was incorrect. I try to take the time to do so, because to me, having the right information out, especially from the get-go, to me, again, is very, very important. It may slow me down. It may, pass me up with opportunities, because people say, okay, I need this done in an hour. And I can't switch, I can't turn things around that quickly, because to me, I want to make sure what I have out from the get-go is the right information, the best information, and the most truthful and the most quality information that I can deliver. So, will it swing back to that? More? I hope so. Will it? I don't know. I hope so. But yeah, there's just so much about the got to be first one on it SEO that I just don't know if that engine is going to turn on anytime soon.
Sure. And I know that this doesn't have anything to do with automotive or journalism in general, but I did kind of want to get your perspective just on, journalistic integrity and what we used to call investigative journalism. I think that you have a little bit of that you're still doing, because you're going out to these events and you're seeing what they're like, and then you're trying to articulate what they are. And so many news articles aren't that anymore. It's just a regurgitation. I remember watching a video recently where they were talking about one place will publish something, and they might even publish something that they know is wrong, and they'll go in and redact or edit or even just take the article down. But because it's been copied and pasted so many times, it lives on the internet forever, and all these different news outlets will take it and run. And that's one of the reasons why I still I like automotive journalism in the fact that I feel like it's one of the last um, undiluted spaces, although it's getting diluted very quickly. And the reason why I'm bringing that up is because I honestly want to know what has been one of your favorite topics to write about in this last
Mm.
4 years you've been doing this.
Boy, one of my most favorite topics to write about, I think, is just the more unique subjects. Whether there is somebody that just organically happens upon a life of custom fabricating vehicles, and they have a crazy handlebar mustache, and they're a Euro dealer, but then they literally make this crazy 12-bar Jeep that was their first, 4x4 four-door Jeep that was ever known to man way before the JK even came about and four-door Jeeps, came about, to women that are very inspiring. Like a 27-year-old that now is probably 29-year-old, Sana Anderson, that's in Illinois, that is working on HT trucks, heavy duty trucks. And she's making her life, even though she's like, this is my passion. My family might disagree, but, inspiring content like that. So the unique, the different, the oddball, of course, with what we own, which I'm sure we'll touch on that in a little bit, but also the inspiring, and the women too. I think there's such a huge opportunity for women in this industry, especially if you're just willing to just put yourself out there. You can always go back to what you were doing. But if you have the love, if you have the passion, if you want to just try it, just go in and try it. Try whatever it may be, whether it's sales or whether it's social media management and marketing, or whether it's just getting your hands dirty and becoming a wrencher. I mean, there's so much you can do. And so I think for me to uncover those layers of complexity and strife and potential anguish, but also the creativity and the perseverance. I know that's kind of a long answer, but and it's a multifolded answer, but to me, I just get the greatest joy of being able to write, on those topics. And some of my most pointed and favorite articles that I've written about those very same subjects were for the New York Times. So I hope in my own very small way that I can use my experience of challenge, of potential failure, and some succession, and just really switching gears and paving my own way and learning through my mistakes can help other people. So I'm an open book, it's the good, bad, and otherwise, like I always say. So I just hope it helps other people.
Sorry, Coy, go ahead.
I have to say, I'm gonna, not trying to throw too much flattery out here. I really have read probably a lot of your articles. I know there's probably some publications that I don't buy or whatever, but I've read many of your articles. I follow, we're friends on Facebook, post a lot of it. I always try and read everything because it's good. But one thing I've noticed, there's automotive media, but you do something a little bit differently than a lot of people do. It's like automotive reporting mixed with personal experience. And it's so refreshing. I love it because like, these are the facts. Here's how I felt about it. And this is what I found it. It's not, you don't see a lot of the grand, wild guessing and just kind of glossing over things. Like this is what's going on. This is how I feel. This is how I enjoyed it. Like, it's more fact-based, yet more personal as well. It's kind of, it's a weird,
relevant
way to explain it. Yes.
Relevant.
Yeah, I appreciate it. I appreciate it. I hope to be able to make people think and think outside the box and just relate. And so that to you, and to me, with your opinion, I think that sounds like I'm doing my job. So that's great to hear.
I absolutely love it. I have one question for you. Since you basically got into this from the ground up, you've been doing it 4 years. I can think it's so safe to say you're a veteran. At this point. People come and go. You've been doing
Andy's a veteran. Andy's a veteran. I'm a freshman still, but you're maybe a veteran. I don't know.
You've enjoyed its success in this niche.
It's not about the age, it's about the mileage. There you go.
Oh, well, if it's about the mileage, then yeah, I guess it would be quite the veteran. So
if there's somebody
I got the little the wrinkles and the gray hair underneath here to prove it also.
If there's somebody out there they see this as a dream, what advice would you give to them? Like they want to start, they have no idea where to start. They'd like to be your biggest competitor.
Coy's actually asking this for himself, by the way.
I can't spell
as he should. for me is just soak up as much information as you can. Get out there and do it. If you want to go to some of these events, find your way there. If you admire certain people's writing, try to reach out to them, befriend them or reach out to them on Facebook or Instagram or wherever it may be. There have been multiple people that have been my champions, that have been huge mentors to me, that have helped me even before I started switching my career and even now. And I do my due diligence to try to pay it forward to other people that are just getting into it, or that are just maybe having trouble and they want to get in the automotive industry, but completely different than even writing. How do they do it, and this and this? And I try to be there for them and listen to them and maybe give some opinions that I might have, or just try to get them connected to different groups that might be able to help them, or nonprofits that might be able to assist. So open your voice, open your mind, and soak up as much as you can and just talk to people. And you never know what some of these conversations or some of these, random bumping into so-and-so at in Moab in the middle of nowhere, driving a, 1942, whatever it may be, may afford you a really interesting opportunity. So, but if you're sitting at home, not doing anything, then nothing's going to happen.
That is the truth. Yeah. Get out there and do something.
Make
Right.
those connections.
Just try
Yep.
it. Just try it.
All right. So we're at 21 minutes in of talking.
Mhm.
So I'm going to rapid fire a few things for you. Okay.
Uh-oh. Okay.
Last 12 months, give me a couple of your favorite events or articles that you've done.
Oh God. It's rapid fire, but now you're making me think a lot. Rapid fire. Yeah. I think one of my most unique events was flying to France to drive the Ineos Grenadier 4x4. I don't know if you guys are familiar with the Ineos Grenadier. It's kind of like a Land Rover old Defender looking thing. As far as I know, I was the only person on the side of North America or the world that was invited to go over to drive it in France. And what was interesting is I hopped in and it was an off-road course, and everybody else was from the EU and from outlying areas, outlying countries. And this was right at the height of Omicron. So of course I was fully vaxxed, that's the Grenadier, but fully vaxxed, fully boosted, masks on, hand sanitizer, all that type of thing to make sure. And we tested before, during, after, all that type of stuff to make sure we were okay doing this all, and doing it and driving a right-hand drive petrol engine or petrol power plant, which I was completely fine with because we own 3 right-hand drive 4x4 sitting at home. But then also later on in that day, hopping in a left-hand drive diesel, which it didn't take me until 2 seconds later to realize, oh, wait a second, I'm on the opposite side, yet I'm driving a diesel. But it was also natural to me because we have both power plants at home, and both, we've got petrol, we've got diesel, we've got right and left-hand drive at home. So I think that was a unique juxtaposition of, I'm finding myself here after switching careers and, ending my life. I was a contractor at Nike at world headquarters for the last couple of years before I switched my career. So taking those skills, transferring into something, and then all of a sudden ending up in the middle of France off-roading a 2B prototype, a very early stage prototype for the Ineos Grenadier, and then coming back and being able to write about it with a couple of different publications. So I'd say that might be one of the more interesting and unusual ones. But I think, some of the other ones is just, again, the events, Easter Jeep Safari. We just came back from that in April and writing a few different articles with that. It's amazing what these vehicles can do from a 4x4 off-road perspective, and the people you meet. I cannot stress enough the people that you meet. It's even more than the vehicles. I swear. It humbles me, and it just gives me so much strength and endurance to say, wow, you're doing this with what? And with what kind of money? And how did you build it? And I want to know everything. And, maybe that's from my background with my parents. They immigrated from Germany. They didn't know a word of English. And they had a small pallet full of stuff and I don't know, probably $20 in their pocket. And they came through Ellis Island and didn't know anything, but they forged their own way and eventually started a fabrication business, just the two of them, and a hoist, but it was welding, fabricating, and blacksmithing back in the 60s, 70s. So maybe me being a shop rat kid, just sitting there and listening to grinding metal and all that type of stuff, watching my dad weld, and maybe always being interested in how it works, how it got built. What are the people? You just met all these different kinds of people that came into the shop and needed help with whatever it may be. And I think maybe that's kind of translating into fast forward now. It's just, wow, you're an owner of this, crazy whatever 1977 whatever you have, and then just learning their story, I think is just so neat to me. So very long-winded rapid fire answer, but
Mhm.
it's the best that I got.
No, that's good. That's really good. And since you brought up the Grenadier, I wanted to ask you about the all electric Jeep Wrangler. What's it called? The EX4 or
The 4 by E.
4 by E? Thank
Yep,
you.
4 by E. Uh-huh.
You were able to drive that, and I specifically asked you not to give me any details because I wanted to ask you about it on the program. But Coy and I have been bouncing this back and forth for a long time. The Rivian was something that we kind of talked at length about this. The possibility of having that instant torque from electric motors and
Mhm.
that really fine throttle control. How did you find the 4 by E?
I've had a chance to drive a couple of different 4 by Es. Now, the 4 by E from Jeep, they have a couple of different vehicles now. So, of course, they've got the Jeep Wrangler that has the 4 by E. They've got a Jeep Grand Cherokee that just came out with 4 by E,
Mhm.
and they're planning on doing more. Now, the 4 by E is a both gasoline and electric assisted plug-in hybrid. Now, there's also an all electric that we're 2 years now in the running. It was the Magneto. So the
Full
Magneto
magneto.
is
Yeah.
right, right. So the 100% Magneto was last year's first ever all electric BEV or battery electric vehicle. And then Magneto 2.0 was this year's all electric vehicle. So I've written articles on that as well. So if you're talking about straight EV,
Mhm.
it was really interesting to drive last year's Magneto, the very first that Jeep has ever done, and now doing the Magneto 2.0. The 2.0 had, I think it was triple the amount of torque and over double the amount of horsepower.
Mhm.
Now think about that for a second. Triple the amount of torque, if I'm remembering everything correctly, and double the amount of horsepower. That's insane. I want to say it's like up to, I think it's 850 foot-pound of torque and 625 or 650 for horsepower. Dead
I mean,
stop, full throttle, crazy, but added so much finesse when driving it
mhm.
off road, so much more than last year's iteration. I can't even tell you how much more control and softness I felt in the agility of it. So I don't want
Because
to
you
give
got to
too much
crawl
away.
it. You got to crawl it a little bit, right? You got to put it on an off-road course?
Right, right. So they have a media day where they have a lot of the different journalists out where they allow you to drive the different concepts. So whether
Mhm.
it's Magneto or the 41 concept or the 20th anniversary 392 Rubicon, or Bob, which was a diesel Gladiator that was literally bobbed in the back, hence why they call it bobbed. They took 12 inches off of it. Or Birdcage. I mean, they had tons of them this year. They had 10 total. They had 3 from 2021 SEMA show that weren't driven up until now. Then they had, let's see, 7 that were new, and I want to say 5 were electrified, with 1 being full EV.
Mhm.
If my memory serves me correctly, I could be wrong. So, you know, but yeah, so it was really interesting to be able to drive that, and everybody had the same type of loop where you went around, and you had a little bit of off camber, rock crawling up, and then you just had a chance to drive it in low range up and down, and
Mhm.
throughout some scenarios, just to get a feel for those vehicles.
And then what was the I know that this is gonna be hard to quantify in a short answer, but how did it feel driving a full EV off-road vehicle
Mhm.
next to a full gas vehicle?
It's surreal. It's still surreal. I've had that opportunity for multiple occasions now, whether it was the 4xe that Andy and I took. It was when the 4xe Jeep Wrangler Rubicon just came out. We got the okay to be able to take it off road in Oregon, and we saved all the EV mode. There is a full EV that you can do it, and I think it's 21 or 22 miles of all electric that you can do with that. And we were able to do that in Tillamook and be able to do some of the forest trails, and it was crazy. It was like, oh, whoa, this is just all EV, and you hear the suspension creaking and the rocks kind of crunching and the dirt slugging. It was a little bit wet when we were taking it out, and the mud slinging, and you heard so many different things you wouldn't expect.
Mhm.
But that was kind of one of the first iterations, but then also doing the first year Magneto, this year Magneto 2.0, and then also with VW, last year's Rebel Rally, they asked me to be the factory driver of their all-wheel drive brand new iteration that they had of their ID4, which was a crossover, an all electric crossover. There's too many alls. All electric, all wheel drive crossover. And so the rear wheel drive was out for a while. Their all wheel drive had just come out about 3 weeks prior to the rally. And that's about 1,400 plus miles. And almost all of it was all off road. And so I had a chance to drive that with my navigator, Emily Winslow. She's awesome. But be able to take that and just hear the wind and then stop and then not have to, hear the the exhaust and all that type of stuff, because you just don't have an ICE engine that's just, making noise. So.
Right. I'm totally with you. I think that the prospect of an all electric off-road vehicle, just from the mechanical standpoint, it has my curiosity, because you effectively have a giant Hall effect sensor that's reading in real time, virtually instantaneously, what the wheels are doing. And so you want to talk about like anti-lock brakes or traction control or Coy, what's the Toyota one called where it operates the brakes?
A-track. Everybody has a
A-track.
version of that now, but
Yeah, but
absolutely.
instead of electronics going to the hydraulics and working the brakes and trying to sense what the wheel speed is and blah blah blah, you've got a component there that's doing all of that at the same time, and it's all integrated. And I think that that's one of the things that I'm really excited for with EV is there's a real opportunity there, for some really enhanced, advanced driving techniques. I think we're going to see that, realistically in the future, this is the direction we want to go. It's going to allow you to go further, get stuck less often, go places you never thought you'd be able to go. I think that there really is a real opportunity there.
What would be interesting is to see how quickly the infrastructure can catch up, because that's the
Well,
biggest outlier of you can run EVs all day long off road or in primitive surroundings, but if you don't have the infrastructure.
I work on electrical infrastructure as my job that actually pays me, and I mean, in previous episodes we've talked way too much about that, but it's like everybody can promise an EV and say they're going all electric by 2030, and it's like,
Right.
that's all good and fair, but you have to work on charging these things. Like a lot
Right.
of people do not realize what needs to happen, especially when you start talking commercial vehicles. I mean, just
Oh,
to run
right.
all the log trucks on electric, it's like you need to double your power supply, and then you have to get the power supply there, and it's just the logistics of that is insane, and the fact that we're not desperately working on improving that now to get ready for this blows my mind.
Yeah, I could only imagine. It's interesting. There are some rally circuits that are overseas in Europe, and I saw that there was an Arctic one that was over in the Baltic Sea region, and there was a couple Polestars and a Tesla that ran it. I have yet to even talk to the teams, nor I'm not even sure if they know English, but that hasn't stopped me before from interviewing people that don't know my language, or German for that matter. But they have a lot better of an infrastructure, of course, all of Scandinavia, right? I mean, they just, and they're not as wide. They're a lot closer together too. So that helps too. Geographically, you don't have 500 miles in between the next towns. But I think here you're definitely right. And I couldn't even imagine working full time in that effort, how that would be and how challenging that would be. From somebody that does a bunch of different rallies, whether it's with, all women for the Rebel rally, or whether it's with Andy, that is like the Alcan 5000 rally, or some of the day trips that we do with sports car club of here in the Pacific Northwest. There's shorter rallies, there's longer rallies, but you still have to fuel it or charge it, however it is. So, and then how do you get that charge, right? Is it diesel? Is it coal fired? Is it solar? Is it hydrogen based? I mean, there's so much complexity to it. So it's a big.
We could talk from dawn to dark about just all these subjects you're barely touching on.
Right. And I'm sure you can just
so
walk
much.
circles around me as far as your experience and your knowledge. So
not
I
really.
just know like that tiny much. So
we all have our own unique experiences. I still have a lot of friends in automation, and right now they have some major concerns. I mean, they're not even thinking about infrastructure. They're thinking about where raw materials are going to come from. And so we're still a long ways off from this stuff. But at the same time, conceptually, I find it very interesting because I come from an engineering background. So when I look at this stuff, I'm like, if we try to put all of the other stuff aside, if we don't think about the child miners that are, clawing with their bare hands to dig
Right.
cobalt and lithium out of the ground, then, conceptually, this stuff is pretty cool.
Right.
Sorry.
So I'm glad that you have such a nuanced view of electric 4x4s. Honestly, the most exciting part for me, I want to be able to talk shit to people with lockers and be like, oh, you have lockers? How quaint. I have 4 motors. I have individually powered wheels. I like that you lock your stuff together. That's so primitive. So number one, I'd like to talk crap to everybody who got lockers before me at any point in my life. And then also, this is the most American thing about electric motors and 4x4s, tank steer, baby. I want to be able to do a 360 and just cut donuts in place. And that is almost a square wheelbase. I say there's no reason it can't do that.
That's a little ways off. When you start looking at like the all electric Hummer and it moves its rear wheels, what is it, 10 or 15 degrees? They call it crab mode, but then when you watch it, it's like, that's not steering all that much in the back. I mean, it's got about the same amount of steering as like a Mitsubishi 3000 GT VR4, but hey, steering is steering. It's not
call it like side-eye mo or something.
Right.
Or something. Yeah, it's kind of a
slightly askew mode.
If you have something that's more boxy, I mean, last year's Magneto was the same size. They actually took a Jeep JL from a dealership, stick shift from the dealership, because they ended up buying one at a dealership and using it as the test mule for the Magneto last year because they couldn't find what they needed.
No kidding.
And so that ended up being Magneto, the first iteration. But this year they stretched it 12 inches to be able to fit everything in. So this one's actually got a longer wheelbase, Magneto 2.0, than its first iteration.
I was really hoping that the second gen one they'd paint like purple and red like the Marvel villain, but I feel like that was a lost opportunity on their part. But I like the white and blue.
I just wish that they'd let me run it in the Rebel Rally. I'm like, hey, why don't you just let me run it? I want to do back-to-back all AVs and do the 4x4 class this year. And they're like, so, hey, I'm up for any kind of challenge. Jeep, if you're listening, right there.
Well, and speaking of, you've got a little bit of an announcement to make. I mean, you've already made it on your social media, but why don't you go ahead and let us know what you have brewing?
We've got a couple good things brewing. So the one that Andy and I just announced a couple days ago, I don't know, my days are blending all together. We are partnering with Subaru of America for the 2022 Alcan 5000 Rally. So that will be coming up this August and September. We're super excited about that. They are going to be giving us an Outback. Yes, there you go. The Outback Wilderness.
One of the ugliest vehicles on the planet, but
well, it's certainly going to be one of the most capable, and especially when you talk about over 5,000 miles of this. So it's going to be in very, very remote surroundings, mainly in Canada. So this year is going to be a different route than what we did in 2020 up to the Arctic Ocean over to Alaska. This one will hit about 30% or so of dirt and gravel roads. But when you think about it, if you're over 5,000 miles, that could be 1,500 to 2,000 miles of just all dirt and gravel. And doing time, speed, distance rallies, this will be a absolutely divine car. So we're super excited to be able to partner with them on it.
Big, comfortable, soft-ish, I mean, you're going to be in Canada, so I would recommend that you don't try to use like a Patreon or anything like that to collect money, because you know how they are with long distance drivers and trying to, procure money. But, I got to say, this is a huge, huge opportunity for you. And I mean, from my standpoint, I could never even imagine Subaru reaching out to me for anything. And now you're going to get one of these to drive in that rally. Did you ever think that you would find yourself in this position?
I never know what I'm doing the next day, much less the next couple of months. But I can tell you one thing, Andy and I have had a longstanding great relationship with Subaru and Subaru Motorsports and Vermont Racing and the whole team. We've covered multiple different Oregon Trail rallies in their rally circuit when it comes to either David Higgins or Travis Pastrana, Bucky Lasik, that type of thing. So we've got that. And then we've also reviewed their vehicles too. So since we're both automotive journalists, again, Andy, with his off hours, because we jokingly say we have no off hours, but his PM hours aside from his full-time job during the day. But, we've always loved Subarus. We've had multiple different Subarus in our household. We actually may be getting one soon, and I can't talk about that just yet. It may have just arrived and I'm out of state, but just have arrived at the dealership today. But we'll talk about that soon. But that being said, they're great all-wheel drive vehicles. They're solid, they're long-lasting. They've got added ground clearance, and they're just great vehicles. They're meant to do what we are planning on doing with it for. So when we approached them on it, we said, "Hey, Subaru, this is what we're thinking of doing. We're in this rally. We did the winter iteration with our right-hand drive, turbo diesel Pajero that we had." 1991 Pajero in temps up to, or down to, not up to, but down to -43 below zero. If you could only imagine that, up to Tuktoyaktuk ice roads and over to Fairbanks, Coldfoot, Alaska, all that type of thing. But this year doing something that is the summer iteration and having them say, yeah, you know what, let's give it a go. And for us to be able to write about it and cover it before and during and after, then yeah, it's a win-win situation. So we're super stoked. And
well, this isn't going to come as any surprise, but right now, right as we're speaking, it's getting a worn winch. I can almost guarantee you that.
I wish that would be so great. That would be so great if that one did. But there are some hidden kits for some of the Subarus out there. So if anybody's got a Subaru, an older Crosstrek or whatnot, there are some hidden kits. And I don't know if Andy's watching. He could probably type down below and just say, all right, which models and what makes and models do actually have that opportunity to be able to put a worn winch on there. But Andy's going to be the driver. He's an awesome driver, and I'm going to be the navigator for it. So, sometimes I drive depending on what rally it may be, and sometimes I'm a navigator. So he's an awesome, awesome driver. And then I fall suit by telling him where to go.
That's awesome. And that's what you should do, by the way. This is something, I don't know why we always have to do this with our spouses, but the reminder of you're the navigator. If I look down at your phone and I see that we have a turn coming up and you're on Amazon shopping for shoes, I need you to stop that immediately and tell me where we're going. So the navigator part, that's much more important than people really you put on it. I'm just throwing that out there, I think it's just about time for us to move on to the news. Of course, we've got a bajillion other questions we can ask you. Before I forget, we're going to do this now. We're going to do it at the end of the show, but let everybody know where they can find you and what you're doing, what you're writing about, please.
Probably the easiest places to find me is via social. So Andy and myself, we have our own outlet and our own brand called Crankshaft Culture. You can find us pretty much everywhere via that name, and then Crankshaft Cult on Twitter, or you can find me via my name, which is Mercedes Lilienthal, which I believe is on the screen. I'm, Mercedes _Lilienthal at Instagram, and then pretty much everywhere as that. And on Twitter, I'm Writer with Grit. You can also find, a whole smattering, of articles online if you were to just type my name into Dear the Google and check things out. And there's Crankshaft Culture. So that's one of our right-hand drive Pajeros that we have. So you can find me online. Drop me a line, drop me a DM, whatnot, if you have any questions, or if you would like to see certain type of coverage that I'm not doing, or any new rallies that we don't know about that we haven't been covering. So it's always great to hear from people.
Yeah, I have to, and I'm sorry, Coy, but that is crankshaftculture.com. We do encourage everyone to go out and check that out. I'm on the Facebook page, Crankshaft Culture, all the time. Yes. I know Coy is too. We cross post all kinds of stuff with the Horsepower Hour Facebook page, and it's all just whenever you can connect with other automotive minded people, it's always a good time. So please do go and check that out. We'll hit those links one more time at the end of the show. What were you going to say, Coy?
Oh, I just had to throw a little bit more flattery your and Andy's way. When I saw the deal you guys had with Subaru there, I've been following you guys, for what feels like forever, since before you were both risen to the levels of fame you are. And when I saw that, I was like, yeah, I know them. Yes, that is so odd. Like, I don't feel like I don't know if proud of you, but like proud that I know you. I was just like, yes, sponsorship, absolutely. And I was freaking stoked. Like, I was started typing a huge thing about how like proud I was of you. I'm like, that's weird. I'm gonna just
that's
like,
a little stalkery.
Yeah.
It's much appreciated. I think for us, go big or go home, right? I mean, you got to try, and if not, you can always go back to what you were doing. And if you don't try and if you don't fail, you're not learning. I say that through and through again, and it goes to show that you can love all sorts of different kinds of cars. And I wanted to mention that crankshaft culture was kind of born because Andy and myself, we love all different kinds of cars, right? We've got a small car website that's called Subcompact Culture that is all about small cars and small car living and all that type of stuff. But crankshaft culture is, basically we're all united by horsepower, right?
Yes.
Well, or watts, right? If you're talking about EVs, but
Sure.
we're all united by horsepower, and every vehicle can be an adventure. So, on-road, off-road, mopeds, 6x6s. I mean, you just never know. And so for us, we've got a very active, you mentioned the Facebook community, very active on that. We also have Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, some YouTube, that type of stuff. So we welcome everybody. We love Toyotas. We love Jeeps. We love Pajeros. We love, BMW Isettas. We love whatever it may be, as long as it's got an engine. And as long as people are just passionate about going somewhere and checking something out and what their build is, we're all in.
Yeah. Oh, couldn't agree more. I mean, Coy, really.
Man, every vehicle I've owned, there's been some story with it. Like I almost got arrested in a Geo Metro. Like, so
I need to hear about that.
Yes, yeah. We just get into it too much right now. But my buddy was driving. He did a cookie through some gravel, and then a cop pointed his gun at us and told us to lay on the ground and stuff. But that was mostly it. But we left, and I know cops have been getting a lot of heat in the news lately, but they've been evil. Well, I should say evil. They've been doing things they shouldn't have for a while.
Wow.
Yeah.
What you should have done, Coy, is just identified that Geo Metro as a kindergarten. Anyways, I think it's time to move on to the news. And I gotta tell you, you guys know already that I'm a Ford fan, and this is only going to reinforce my Ford fandom. Ford. Now this comes from Motor Trend. It says new Ford Mustang Ranger and Ranger Raptor electric commercial van confirmed, but that's not really the meat and the potatoes of this article. Ford has announced plans to invest $3.7 billion and more than 6,200 new union jobs. This isn't even like they're not trying to fight the unions at all. They're starting new factories in Michigan, Ohio, and Missouri by the end of 2026. And that comes on top of the factories that they've already revamped in Kentucky and oh my gosh, I'm sorry, I'm totally spacing, but all of the other states that they've already pumped money into over the course of the last 4 or 5 years. I mean, Ford is really doubling down on bringing their manufacturing back to the United States and bringing those jobs back to the United States, high-paying manufacturing jobs, trade jobs. I don't know. This impresses me so much. It impresses me so much more than the Mustang Mach-E, obviously. I mean, what an absolute pile that thing looks like. But I will forgive their transgressions because of how much they're reinvesting back into the US market. I mean, are you guys seeing this? Am I way off base here?
You go first, Mercedes.
Oh. Anytime that you've got a manufacturer that is putting money back into the economy and bolstering different states, especially the hardest hit ones, I think that that's a good thing. Everything's global. Parts are all global. A lot of parts are coming through. It could be an American built vehicle, but a lot of parts may still come from overseas. You don't have any true 100% American made or Japanese made or any of that type of thing anymore. But what Ford's doing, I think, is a great thing. I mean, I think that they're expanding, they're diversifying, they're edgy, they're just really thinking ahead, and I think that's a great thing. It'll be exciting to see.
Well, speaking of importing their parts, one of their new plants, or a couple of their new plants, is going to be specifically battery and EV manufacture. And I have all of my specific things that I want to say about batteries and EVs right now, the way we're making them. But the fact of the matter is, we're not just bringing stuff in from overseas. They're actually starting to make their own battery platforms. They're starting to optimize them for their own line of vehicles,
Mhm.
and they're building them here. And
Mhm.
that means a lot to me. You know,
Yeah.
it's a new resurgence of American industry, I feel like.
Yep. Yep. Yeah. And when I rallied with VW, with all electric ID4, I had a chance to go to Chattanooga and that area and be able to see their plant where they have a battery plant. They have the ID4 plant that's going to be coming on live or online here shortly, and all those types of things too. So
Mhm.
it's not just Ford, it's other manufacturers as well. But I think that that is something that's really cool, especially if they're high paying jobs, even if they're shop or like, floor jobs for the assembly line. I think that those are important jobs and that will really help bolster the economy.
And the unions aren't always, I mean, unions, they can go good, they can go bad. Sometimes unions do great things, sometimes
Mhm.
unions do terrible things. But the fact that Ford is kind of embracing it, down here a little bit later in the article, it says today's $3.7 billion commitment comes on the heels of Ford's announcement that will spend $7 billion as part of a joint investment of $11.4 billion to build 4 plants in Tennessee and Kentucky to make batteries and the next generation of all electric F series trucks. There is a lot of talk, by the way, about a new all electric truck that's not the Ford Lightning. It's something that's going to be in between the Ford Maverick, which is currently the cheapest hybrid vehicle you can buy.
Mhm.
Not just truck, cheapest hybrid vehicle, period, that you can
Right.
buy on the market right now. And of course, the Ford Lightning, it's bridging that gap. And I'm telling you, there's something to be said about when you're an industry leader, it's moves like these. I don't know if you can really. I mean, I think in some ways you can call Ford an industry leader for a few different reasons. At least in their work trucks, the Ford F-150, of course, is the best selling vehicle in the United States for years and years now.
Mhm.
But making moves like this, it's moving pieces on a chessboard, and I think that they are really setting themselves up in a good position. Well, quite frankly, I think some of the other manufacturers are lagging behind, still trying
Mhm.
to import products and still trying to get their first generation of this new type of vehicle out. You know, every time I see some article that says, "Oh, Dodge just introduced their Ram is and it's going to be a competitor for the all electric Ford or whatever," but they're behind the eight ball. They're already a year and a half, 2 years, 3 years behind in their
Mhm.
development. And that's why I think Ford is really going to solidify itself, at least in this realm, as the new industry, or not new, but continued industry leader. Do you guys have thoughts on that?
My main thought is, why doesn't everybody know who Jim Farley is? Because doing more. He's done more for Ford than however long he's been leading it. Like, Ford wasn't that cool 12, 13 years ago, but in the last 5 years, Ford has freaking ramped up their game, dude. Like, they have some cool stuff. I'm a medium Ford guy. Like, I don't go buy a bunch of Ford products, but I like Ford heavy duty trucks. But they're pulling me into the rest of their stuff slowly and surely.
Yeah.
But we're all,
Suddenly you saying living in a Ford van down by the river is a
yeah,
luxury.
yeah, we're all gonna remember Chris Farley and not Jim Farley, and that's a little sad.
Yeah. One was a drug addict. The other changed the face of the automotive industry. I mean, like, what are we doing here, guys?
Yeah.
Right.
Mercedes, what do you think about all this?
I think Ford's done a great job just really kind of re-imaging and revamping and just progressing. And I think the Bronco, I mean, we haven't really mentioned the Bronco. I mean, heck, look at the energy. I mean, my gosh, SEMA, Overland Expo West. I mean, even Broncos, rain on the parade with Easter Jeep Safari a bit again, as they did last year. But,
Mhm.
I
you
love
know,
that so much. That was such
yeah, it's like,
good
for
energy.
every 500 Jeeps, there's like, 20 Broncos that are, putting around during EJS, over in Moab. But, yeah, I think that that's important. And I think that just making sure that you stay fresh to the audience and retain your existing ownership of people that are your customers, but then also branch into the younger crowd that are going to be starting to buy vehicles that are higher priced items, and that even entry level ones like the Maverick, right? But just kind of cross platforming, so you have something for everybody, and to engage those younger audiences by still retaining your existing population is really important. So
I think they're doing a great job
consistency.
of that. Well, with the
Right.
transit van, I think they're doing a great job of that because, I think that especially nowadays, if a young person is looking for a place to live, a house ain't going to cut it, but they can go out and get a transit van for $23,000 and live in that.
Right. Oh
Right?
yeah, there's a whole bunch of things that you can do about, transit vans, all sorts of stuff. And it doesn't have to be a $250,000 crazy, I don't want to pick on sprinter builds, but sprinter vans from Mercedes
I
Benz or
want you
whatnot.
to, though.
Like, yeah, it's just like, look at us, right? I mean, we've got a Mitsubishi Delica van. I mean, mind you, we don't have the interior build out yet because we keep hauling booths and bumpers and all sorts of other stuff in our van, so we can't really build it out. But that's one of our things we'd like to do. But you don't have to spend a ton of money to be able to get out there and do what you want to do, whether it's live full time in your vehicle. I mean, hell, I know people that have had a Ford Festiva all over the world, and they lived out of it, and it's just like, it's a peace love car, right? And so, and I can't remember the year. I want to say it's like an 83. Oh gosh, Sam, don't kill me if I don't remember the year. But I also wrote an article on them, and I loved hearing about how Sam and Raquel were able to make it happen. And they just bought no, it was actually given to them, I think, for free, or they ended up buying it for $500. But they made it happen, and they did it. So it's like Ford Transit, all of that type of stuff. It's go for it.
Both of those are actually the going prices. Both of those are the going price for Festivas. So
yeah. pretty much. And it could be for the Geo Metro too, I'm sure. So
yeah.
How dare you? I love Festivas. They're
in
such
this market. Geo Metro is actually maybe going up in value. I maybe should have kept mine.
Yeah, Festivas.
Right.
Too.
Always
Festivas
keep the Metro. Always keep the Metro.
Yep. Anything that has good fuel economy. I don't know if this next vehicle in our lineup of news has good fuel economy or not, but man, you cannot argue with this performance. So the 2022 Hyundai Elantra N, you guys, Motor Trend tested this in the dual clutch configuration. This is the automatic, quote unquote, but it's not really an automatic. It's dual clutch 8-speed transmission, like, of course, we were first introduced to in Porsches and BMWs, and the E46 M3 with the DSG transmission and stuff like that. I kid you not, this thing is running nearly identical numbers in the quarter mile and around a skid pad as the newest generation of this Civic Type R. Can you believe that, Coy?
That both sickens and excites me on multiple levels. I mean, it's sad. I'm a little bit of a Honda fanboy. I don't not really the newer stuff so much, but still, the fact that a Hyundai, and we've been saying, man, like everything's good now. There's no bad cars. Hyundai's
except for the smart car.
Well, yeah, but if I were Hyundai, my move right now would to be find the best driver in the world, take this thing to Nürburgring.
Nürburgring ring.
Yeah.
The Nürburgring, yeah.
And I don't care if it was 1/1000th of a tenth. I would force him to drive it till he beat the Type R there, and then I would never shut up about it ever.
Right.
I would blast that, and it would destroy Honda's Type R market. It just would.
Dude, I would 100% put Hoosiers on it and just not tell anybody. And any spy photos, I would just make sure that they couldn't zoom in far enough to see that it had slicks on it. So check this out, you guys. 0 to 60 in 5.1 seconds. And these days, that doesn't seem like the fastest thing in the world. Clips off the quarter mile in 13.7 seconds at 104 miles an hour. Coy, we talk about this all the time, but those numbers 10 years ago, 15 years ago would be absolutely unheard of, especially
significantly faster than the S2000 I owned in the quarter mile. Like, that's almost a full second faster.
And here's the crazy part to me. This car has a programmable launch control and a scramble boost button. So you can actually set the RPMs at which you launch this car. I believe this is only available with the DSG, but I could be wrong. It could be in the manual as well. But you can actually set a launch control limiter. And also you have the scramble boost button. I don't think it gives you a whole bunch right off the bat. I think we looked at this a number of episodes ago. Coy, remind me, wasn't it like 40 or 50 more horsepower for 20 seconds?
I don't even know if it was that much.
It might not have been. It might have been more like 30. But just the fact that they have it, and the idea that maybe in the future you would be able to reprogram that for something different. And that's the kind of the weird thing about these is we got to keep in mind, the market for like plug-in tuners is outrageous right now. Mercedes, you know what the Kia Stinger is, don't you?
Mm-hmm.
You can use a plug-in tuner on one of those, and it's literally just you can put an intake on it, put an exhaust on it, and I think you need to upgrade the intercooler pipes. But then once you put a tuner on it and you put it to the max performance or whatever, it'll add 100 horsepower and 100 foot-pounds of torque. It's literally 25% more horsepower and torque than it came with from the factory. It goes from 280 some odd to almost 400 horsepower. And we have to understand that this is not stopping here. I think that we're going to see something for this line of cars that does exactly the same thing. And I'm telling you right now, like, even as we're talking about all of this EV stuff and the direction that everyone's going, I really am putting a lot of faith into Hyundai and Kia because they are coming out with these, fun little sporty cars. And I don't know. I feel like this might be some of the last the true tuner vehicles that we get to see from the factory. And I'm all about it. I'm 100% on board for it.
Yeah, it's interesting with Kia and Hyundai, how long and how hard and how triumphant they've been over the last decade plus. I mean, even the last couple of years, it's amazing. And especially their warranty too. I mean, gosh, they got one of the best warranties on the face of the planet as far as vehicles. So, but I mean, it really beats the pants off of the way back when, with the Hyundai accent, Hyundai that had it, I think my friend had one of their little hatchbacks in 2000. I was like, oh, what is this thing? And I mean, mind you, she wasn't very clean with her car, but she called it Pigpen. But a far cry compared to what I actually have. A K5 sitting out there is my rental car right now. But, very far cry to where both of those manufacturers are right now. So
they're very, very good cars.
Yeah,
and this one blew me away too. This is a quote from Motor Trend, Coy. On our skid pad loop, the Elantra N was just shy of averaging 1 G of lateral load. It was 0.97 G before it reached the limit. And you and I are old enough to remember when Sport Compact Car was doing the ultimate streetcar shootout, and there was a Dodge Viper on Hoosier A8s, literally road race slicks, that was doing a 0.98, and this one's doing 0.97s on Michelin pilots from the factory.
Wow.
We got to give a little bit of that to Advance's entire technology, but I do remember if you could pull higher than 1G on a skip pad, you were fucking boss. Like your car was legit, and now
you're God among men.
Yes, and now a 4-door Elantra can do it.
Elantra, a $27,000 car.
It's almost painful to just talk about, honestly.
Andy, I totally agree. It's like Andy's had those discussions too. He's like, oh my gosh, when you can get, a Toyota Corolla out of the box, that's just like, crazy horsepower compared to what it was like how many years ago. It's just insane.
Yeah.
Hyundai's almost there. Like they've gotten the respect of at least the older guys like us. The newer guys, I think, to the scene, like Hyundai, they don't remember when Hyundai was shit. So it's not, but the last step is when you start seeing Hyundai tattoos on guys' forearms.
I shouldn't laugh.
They have won once that happens.
Right.
And by the way, that tattoo, no regrets. No regrets. All right, you guys, that is all of the news that we had because I knew we were going to run long talking to you, Mercedes. But we do have the first of our two segments for the night. Let's go ahead and get into our OLAF, shall we?
Overland is fucked!
Coy, you sent this to me, man. What's going on?
Dude, Pelican is stepping it up in the overland game, bro. So Pelican case, if I'm sure everybody is aware of who they are, they make all kinds of extremely durable cases for the military, for the civilian market. A lot of people keep their drones and camera equipment. Mercedes, you probably own a Pelican case or some Pelican adjacent. Yeah.
Well, you guys are from Oregon, so I mean, this is the perfect case for like bongs, expensive glassware that you don't want broken, right?
I could put my Riedel wine glasses in there, but that would kind of defeat the purpose of actually drinking out of them.
I love the fact that you brought that up because Riedel wine glasses are literally the most fragile thing on the planet. I'm pretty sure Mazda's all-wheel drive transmissions in the early 90s were made out of Riedel wine glasses.
Do me a favor, ask Andy about washing Riedels. He doesn't touch them anymore. I have to do them all.
We actually got a set of 6 back when Corey and I were doing our food podcast, Pardon My Fork, and I broke every single one of them within a month. It was seriously.
Oh, we've had ours for many years, and we ended up buying the commercial grade ones. Since we live in Oregon, because Andy and I said, I think earlier in the podcast that we jokingly say we hate free time, but we do work part-time, very part-time at a winery every year. And we've done so since I think 2009. And so, Oregon actually has a very specifically designed Riedel Oregon Pinot Noir glass. And so we've got, I think, a case and a half. Yeah, Andy says I let Mercedes wash them, of course, because we may have had a couple of mishaps. I love you, honey. But that being said, we also have a white wine. I think it's a Chardonnay, more Chardonnay inspired one, and then also a red, like a bigger bowl one for Bordeaux style wine. So, I nerd jack on some of the stemware that we have because, of course, I spent 20 years as an interior designer. You got to have good, I love to entertain too, right? But now it just seems like there's, clutches sitting on dining room tables and cars in the middle of the entry when you walk in. So, things change a bit.
Hey, my wife and I, for 18 months, we did a very popular podcast called Pardon My Fork, where we talked to wineries and distillers and chefs from all across the Pacific Northwest. So we're kindred spirits here. I'm actually sad that we moved out of Oregon before we had a chance to come and do like a wine and cheese night with you guys. But let's just, at this point, we've already emphasized, like, if you have something very fragile that you need to put into a case and travel with, Pelican's it, right, Coy?
Absolutely. And I have multiple feelings about this Pelican case because, like many Pelican products, it comes at a premium. I believe the specific model we're looking at here is, what is that, $600?
It's $400, but I'm just going to direct your attention down to this spot that says out of stock.
No, they're overland AF, bro. Like, people want them.
No. Well, they have a whole new lineup of stuff, or at least they were there sharing their wares at Overland Expo East on the East Coast last year, and they also had new bracketry that could fit on a whole host of different roof rack platforms like Front Runner and Rhino Rack and that type of stuff. So
that is the ones we're looking at here.
Right.
Yeah, there's multiple sizes. They're bracketry to where it locks in. Very cool. I like it. It's waterproof, all the good stuff. But once again, it's $400. This is one of their larger ones. And my only beef with Pelican cases is they're not exactly light. Like, they're heavy duty, and that costs in weight. And unbeknownst to many overlanders, roof racks do have weight limits. And it's surprisingly low. Oftentimes well under 200 pounds, with maybe the exception of Land Cruisers, I think, are pushing 300, but most 100, 150 at most. And now a bunch of the weight you're putting up there is literally the case. So that's kind of, you're probably going to need 2 cases. So you probably got 50 pounds of case on the roof now. If you got a 112 pound weight limit, you can fill it with feathers. So,
or Riedel glasses, because Riedel glasses really don't weigh very much.
That's true. That being said,
and you also have to think about the vehicle weight rating on the roof too. The roof can only carry so much for weight too, as far as static or rolling load.
The roof weight limits are higher than most people think,
right,
because they have to be able to withstand rollovers and stuff.
Yep.
But the racks themselves are still not even the most well-built rack can only withstand so much.
Right.
But these can be mounted in the bed as well, which then just take up a ton of bed space. And at the price of a couple of these, you could literally buy a canopy. All that being said, I still think it's super cool. Like, I love the way it locks in over the fender well there. It's super legit. I like it. It's a hard flex, even though it makes almost no sense.
Coy, here's what you can do. On one side of your pickup bed, you can have a Pelican case, one of the big ones. On the other side, you can have 2 Yeti coolers rode up.
Ooh. The other beef I have with doing it this way, you can also buy these things just called truck boxes. They're made out of metal. They go across the back of your truck. They're like 200
bucks. It's all about the
bucks.
image, though. It's all
They
about
lock.
the image.
Well, you could get them in black diamond plate stuff. But,
Well, yeah.
while Pelican cases are extremely durable, and these ones are locking, Sawzalls love to go through plastic. Metal, on the other hand, this still does it, but there's a lot more noise and stuff involved. So if you're trying to lock like actually valuable stuff in here, you're still locking it in plastic. I could literally just roll up with a drill with a 5-inch hole saw, pop a hole in that in 43 seconds and just reach my arm in there. And,
Okay.
I guess
I have
for me, it's like,
I have the solution, you guys. I apologize for interrupting. So I'm going to start a new company where I make vinyl stickers, and it's going to say Pelican. It's not Pelican. It's not Pelican. Coy, famously, I once bought a Mazda Speed accessory off of eBay. This was 15 years ago. And when it arrived, it said Mazda's peed. And so I can do that. I can do that. We can make a brand called Pelican, and I can just say the sticker, and it can go on any lockbox, and now you can flex.
Oh boy. All I gotta say is, if anybody wants whatever is in said Pelican or metal diamond plate lockbox, whether it's silver, chrome, what have you, black, just don't take me with it or with you if you want to steal that out of the car or anything. It's just like, that's what insurance is for, and it's just all deterrent, as you guys know. I mean, I'm preaching to the choir here, but still, it's like, if they want it bad enough here, go have it. Not like anybody come find us, but still, it's like,
Well, you live in Portland, so
yeah.
I mean, you know how they do with the catalytic converters there. If they can take your catalytic converter while you're sleeping in 4.5 minutes, they can get into your Pelican case in half that time and take all your cool stuff.
What's crazy is at least all of our JDMs don't have cats. So they'll be sorely mistaken because they don't have cats on them. They just were never made with them. So
they broke into the yard I work at and stole a bunch of cats out of these diesel trucks, but where they cut them, they got into the header and then back into the exhaust, and it was like $5,000 to replace it on each truck after labor and stuff. That's
amazing. What I'm afraid of. If they take all of it, it's just like, and then we've got our little lower Toyota Yaris sitting there. And it's like, really? I mean, there have been thefts that are that hit businesses right around the corner from us. So, and we've got friends of ours that have Priuses and then also Elements in our neighborhood. So, and those are really hot, commodities when it comes to those.
The Prius catalytic converters are definitely a hot commodity.
Wow.
Well, I'm surprised you'd see it in your neighborhood too, because you guys live in a good area. I remember when I showed up for the first time to interview Andy, I was like, wow, this is a great neighborhood.
Yeah. It's an old, great, safe area. But as you guys are well aware of, that there's a lot of Portland that's changing. So it's sad to see, but for us, it's home. It's still home, and we just try to be as safe as we can. We never leave any valuables out. We just never give the opportunity or lessen the opportunity, because we just don't keep anything in our cars. So.
Well, I mean, it's like I used to make stickers. You know how the saying goes, keep Portland weird. I used to make stickers that said keep Portland in Portland.
Right.
I like to keep Portland weird stickers. They used to be super cool, but now I'm like, it's weird enough. Like you could stop making it. Like we've arrived.
Well, you got friends in Austin that say Austin was the first ones that said that it's keep Austin weird, I think. Right, Andy? I don't know. I think you might be still listening, but I don't know if Portland was first or if Austin was first, but
it was Austin. It was Austin first because I have friends in Texas that were like, man, get this Austin out of here. How do we just get the whole town, put a dome over it, and then send a nuke in so it doesn't affect anybody else?
Yeah. We got friends all over the place in Texas. We love them all. Especially their accents. Love you guys.
All that being said, these Pelican cases, while they make almost no sense to mount a Pelican case like this, and it seems like the most expensive answer to your problems, I can't deny the coolness, which puts it squarely in the Overland AF category. So take us out,
100%. That's just simply logical, to be honest with you. Oh, I got to lead us out, by the way.
Overland is
all right. Which leads us, by the way, to our final segment. And Coy, I'm glad you said that, because it's all about doing it for the gram, right? It's not necessarily about, is it a good value? Is it practical for what we need? And I feel like all of that embodies our smoking a deal or smoking a deal. Wow. I just did it. People do this to me all the time. They're like, I think that's a smoking a deal. It's not smoking a deal. It's smoking a doobie. It's either a smoking deal or a smoking a doobie. And now I just said it because I've been conditioned, because enough of you guys reach out to me and go, this thing is smoking a deal. It's not smoking a deal's. You can't roll a fat deal. Well, I guess you can. Anyways, we're getting sidetracked. Let's get back to the program.
smoking deal or smoking a doobie.
This week's smoking deal or smoking a doobie is something that I ran across. And full disclosure, you guys, I did find a Delica. And Mercedes, you've got a Delica. You love the van. It's an awesome ride. I did find a Delica that was completely outfitted. It was completely livable, but it felt too easy. As soon as I mentioned it to you, you were like, oh yeah, that's not a deal, and here's why. And I was like, man, we can't do that, because that's a gimme. We need to make it a little bit more interesting, right? And so that's why I picked this one. This is a 2006 Ford E350. So this is a 1-ton chassis van. It is 4-wheel drive. It's got the 8-lug axles. Now, strangely, I would have thought that this would be a diesel. It's not. It's a gas engine. So I was a little bit surprised by that.
Is this a Triton V10 though? Please say no.
I don't think it is. I think it's just the 460 big block.
How many miles?
It's not the highest in the world, but it's also not low. It's 123,000 miles, almost 124. So it's not bad, but it's over that 100,000 mark. Let's go ahead and go through the description real quick. Newly built adventure van. The exterior is completely covered in Line X. They say that like it's a good thing, but it's actually not. Tires are BF Goodrich 17-inch KO2s, which I've heard is a very good off-road, on-road kind of hybrid tire. As a matter of fact, I may be going and picking up some of these tires this coming weekend.
We run them. They're good tires.
You run them. They're good tires.
Yeah, we run them. Yep.
123,667 miles, unleaded gas engine, 4x4 Quigley conversion, manual shift, manual locking, hubs with a 4-inch lift, shift on the fly, custom E350 Fox shocks, a 270 awning by Bundu Tech, newly covered front seats and front floor and roof carpet, pop-up roof completed by Sportmobile, rock sliders front and rear, bumpers by Proline, lights, blah blah blah, drawer system. It's got a Snowmaster fridge, Camplux water heater, Dometic propane stove, 2 100 amp hour lithium batteries, solar power, interior fan, soundproofed, an inverter, power for a microwave. Microwaves not included, by the way. 30 amp shore power to be plugged in. Bench turns into a bed. Front passenger seat swivels. 29-gallon water tank, and a Badland winch. And I actually had to laugh because that was the first thing you said to me. You were like, yeah, I was hoping that it would have a high quality winch like a Warn, but no, it has a Harbor Freight winch.
A lot of the other items on this build, I just took a 2-second look when you sent it to me. A lot of the higher end, upgrades, a lot of the nicer stuff. So, but I'm biased. I have to say I'm
Yeah.
honestly biased. So
You
Bundu
got to
Tech
scrimp somewhere.
awning. They got a Bundu Tech awning and a Harbor Freight winch. Like, can you get farther apart?
yeah.
Full disclosure, this was built and is currently in North Miami. So this is a little bit of a do it for the gram build, not a capable to go anywhere in the Pacific Northwest build. So just keep that in mind as we're looking at this, you guys. I want to go through the photos, but I do need to address the elephant in the room. In this particular case, it's probably like an elephant in a closet, because this is a big one for me. It's $75,000. Now, before we start assessing whether or not that's a deal or a doob, let's just quickly go through the photos, okay? So, full-size van, it's got a lift, it's got some nice meaty tires on it. It really does look like it's built to go off-road, or at the very least, it's built to look like it's ready to go off-road. Do you know what I'm talking about, Mercedes?
Right.
He's got the Coy, what are these things called? The
They're not
traction
Max Track.
boards.
I don't
They're
know
a
who makes those.
that looks like a Smitty built element track, but it could
Yeah.
be any copycat type brand.
They're
I mean,
not treads. Yeah, they're not ARB. They're not Max Tracks for sure. Those are the two
those,
that we'd consider.
yeah, legit
Huh.
treads and ARB.
Right,
or,
right.
So
Max
we're
Track.
starting
Max
we're
Track's
starting
right.
to lose the overland AF factor here. That's what I feel like I'm hearing. Also,
Well, and what's with the bookshelf in the back that holds the propane tank and the two jerry cans? Is that literally a bolt together bookshelf thing? What is
yeah,
that carrier? It looks a little interesting.
it looks like it, and then the propane tank is a blue Rhino. So I'm like, again, if you're gonna do this, you guys, pull that blue Rhino sticker off and get one of my Pelican stickers. Like, let's class this let's class this thing up a little bit. It's got some neat wood interior that's built into it. You see it's got double doors in the back. The first door swings out, and you see like a chef's knife and
That's
some
for
of
the
your
gram.
seasonings and stuff. That's for the gram, of
That's for
course.
the gram.
We see the large insulated cooler, and then in the right hand rear door, we see the instant water heater that's run off of propane. I do like that. That means that you can take a hot shower, you can run hot water out of your sink. And here we see the cooktop that slides out. We see the sink that slides out. We've also got a little cutting board that slides out. Some of this stuff is actually pretty cool looking. We do have some really unnecessary woodwork in the side doors.
Adds weight.
Adds weight. They show some booze. This literally just looks like a letter mailbox.
I was just going to say, it looks
not
like our old school mailbox that we took out of our house from the 1960s.
exactly. You see this teeny tiny little microwave here. Just a quick reminder, they do not include that microwave. I'm seeing these fabric drawer slides that you get from IKEA. Those are literally $4 a piece. So
And
not
so
a
if you
whole
end
lot
up
of money
taking
to
that
invest.
vehicle off road, those will be out in that middle of the floor, with any off camera situation.
Thank you for bringing that up. I feel like just a couple miles of washboard and all those will rattle right out.
Right. They'll be halfway out. Yeah. Interesting. Huh.
Yeah, I have a lot of thoughts about this build. They used hardwood. Like, there are parts of it that look really good, but then when you
Right.
look inside the door panel where the booth is stored there, then it looks kind of like your dad's buddy's kind of almost a finished carpenter, and he gave you some tips and let you use his joiner planer. Like, there's parts of it that look really good and parts that not. That just doesn't. Something's not finished looking there. I'm not sure exactly.
Is that booze actually in there?
It is.
Yeah,
And
there's a scotch and there's a wine. And then, Coy, what you're talking about here is you see this Dynamat where it's like pieces. It's like reclaimed pieces that they stuck together of Dynamat on the inside of the door.
Right.
I don't know if this is what they're talking about when they say sound insulated, but this does not count.
But to have it exposed is interesting. Well, I mean, that in the fact that if you have any kind of booze, you're supposed to have that in the way back, like packed away, that could be an open intoxicant, I think.
Well,
Isn't
This
it?
is Florida. Keep in mind, you can get a gallon of margarita mix in a drive-through in Florida.
True.
So
True.
there is
Yeah.
that.
Right.
That part being said, yes, open container laws be damned, but just that's stored there, they have just kind of like a little strap going across. There's enough room for those to jump 4 inches straight up at minimum. I can't imagine that any kind of rough road that's just gonna the bottles can touch each other. You can't let glass touch each other, like it'll just shatter. Like,
and it's not Velcro; it's just like rubber straps or something.
You think this is all show and no go as far as off road?
Well, we're getting there. We're getting there. One of the things I do want to talk about, something that I actually like, and it's this pop-up with the bed. So now you don't have to worry about where's the bed going to be. Is it going to fold out? You know, you have all of those worries. You have this full pop-up canopy on the top, and then a bed that really takes up the whole top of this vehicle. I think you can easily call this a queen. So sleeping in this, if you're not somewhere hot and humid, I don't think would be all that big of a deal, because this really does look like a pretty accessible and easy place to go in and have a good night's sleep. That is one very positive that I'm going to throw on this. This isn't something you always see with these van conversions. And I like this. I like that the bed is out of the way and it gives you plenty of living space underneath. That, again, that's just sort of my opinion.
You just need to make sure that you have a ladder to get up there and you didn't have enough booze before you tried to get up there. and if it's from Florida, if it's a newly based build, then maybe they didn't sleep in it in Florida, because the times that I've spent in Florida, way humid.
Yeah. There's a spot up here. I have no idea what that's for, but it looks like a little bit of like a hatch in the top of the canopy. I definitely would be trying to get an RV, a small RV, AC unit in that. Oh, for sure. 1000%. If you were going to keep this in Florida, if you're going to trek through the Everglades, if you're going to try to do any Florida overlanding, or really any deep south overlanding at all, because we do have some of that around here. It's not all flat. I mean, there's plenty of overlanding groups that are down here or in Georgia, Louisiana, Alabama, that sort of thing. But to be able to live or make this a livable space, you would have to have an air conditioning unit. I do not see any other way to make this livable, truly.
Yeah, I don't think there's a good way to be able to have like an off-road swamp cooler or anything like that.
Well, you don't, hey, this is the deep south. You don't want a swamp cooler. Anything that's going to add humidity, don't.
Right,
no.
true.
You got to get one of those Jeff Foxworthy ice cooler things get advertised on Facebook all the time.
Yeah.
You know, I think this build is indicative of where it's at. Like, obviously, us sitting in the Northwest, look at this, and we're just like, this won't work. This won't work. This won't work. On the other hand, if you were in Florida, there's less, BLM land. By less, I mean a fractional amount of the BLM land there. I'm assuming the terrain is far less rocky and rugged.
Yeah.
A lot of these little things we're picking up may not really be an issue. Like, they're probably not having a problem.
Except for the AC.
Well, yes, but that's, I mean, if you're roughing it, it's going to be rough, I guess.
But I think if you're taking this on, I say Forest Service roads, right? But on trails that are more flat, or just, gradual turns, not crazy off camber, you're in a single track that's like, going 3,000 feet down, straight down, and you're like switchbacks like crazy, where you don't necessarily know how far your van's going to get tilted. I think, this would be perfect for most people, but I look at Andy and myself, and we do a lot of different things in addition to those types of things. So that's where my mind goes first, is the capability of how well can it swing, as far as, how hard can it swing off road, more than just gravel trails.
And you could correct me if I'm wrong, but I feel like there's some capability here. I mean, this is a Ford 1-ton chassis, and 1-tons aren't typically what you're going to take, doing rock crawling or like severe off-road stuff.
Right.
But I do think that there's capability there. You've got the big 8 lug axles, you've got manual lockers, like you've got all of the things that you would need. I'm not talking about going rock crawling, but something
Right.
like this, if you were taking this through the Moab in November, I can see how this would all work, get a small space heater and you'd be perfectly comfortable. But when you start talking about overlanding in the deep south, and I'm only bringing this up because again, this is located in North Miami. So I would assume that it's being sold to a person that's here in the deep south. And I'm just sitting here wondering, who is this build really for? Because I'm just not, you don't have the proper insulation. You don't, that canvas canopy. While I think it's cool being able to put your bed above, it's canvas, the air is going to come right through, the humidity is going to come right through. I mean, this seems like the kind of van where if they had built it in, you know I don't know, Northwest Washington, um
Well, the desert. I mean, I
or
think especially with it
yeah,
being a pop top, I mean, a lot of stuff will mold by us if they don't keep on top of it, because if you pack away anything that's wet, I mean, whether it's tents or rooftop tents or what have you, you're asking for a whole world of hurt if you're not on top of that.
To me, I once again, it's indicative of where it's being sold. This thing has all the kind of overland little check boxes. They're not checked the way I would check them. This is a beach camper. I mean, it's Florida. There's spots you can drive on the beach. This guy, they weekend on the beach. It's cooler. Like, I think that's what
Nice.
this build
A little road
actually
tripping.
probably got, road trip. It's not really an overlander. That being said, the chassis itself, a Quigley conversion, like obviously vans aren't, off roaders, but this is a solid van chassis wise. And then what was the Sportsmobile tops, like that's a legit pop top. Like
Right.
the actual chassis build is good. I mean, a Quigley
Mhm.
conversion, I checked as we were talking, depending on options and shocks and lift kits, they go between 12 and like $18,000. Obviously there's wait times and stuff involved.
Right.
And Sportsmobile conversions for that pop top, depending on options, they go from like 20 to $40,000. Like they're quite
really?
expensive. So
I think as
this
far
one
as the
looks lower end. It's not super fancy, but it's still
right.
probably 18 grand or something just to get that conversion.
I think as far as the vehicle capability itself, I think that outshines some of the parts that we're dissecting in in the interior. I think the vehicle itself would be, better suited for some of those more trickier trails, but then the interior would fare worse because of some of the design elements that they incorporated. So, and Quigley is legit. I mean, I've not driven a Quigley converted vehicle yet. I'd love to. I've written about them and I've showcased owners that have had them that have taken them all over the place. But I think this is kind of a hybrid, and I think you nail it on the head. I think it's a beach camper. I think it's a road tripper that can do some Forest Service trails and some lighter stuff. But with all of that weight and some of those other accoutrements that are there, might be a little bit more tricky off road, just from the livability and usability standpoint from the interior, not necessarily the exterior. That's just my 2 cents.
Yeah.
I fully agree. Now, with some slight modifications to the interior, if you had some adventure bikes or maybe some ATVs, this thing could
Mhm.
easily tow something. You'd be
Right.
nimble. You'd be a mountain goat. You take that thing out into Moab, obviously not
Dude,
in July, but
that'd be the perfect home.
yeah,
Drop
you
and
could,
roll, like
yeah,
literally drop what you got and then take your mountain bikes or whatever else you got. Yep.
yep, base
That's what
camp
I was
like
thinking earlier.
mother effers. Like it would be awesome. Like I
AF,
would love
right?
to have this. So as much crap as I kind of am talking about the build out, it's all fairly minor. Like we can swap out winches, we can add some different drawer stuff in there with some locks or
Right.
some kind of securement, and this
Yep.
could be super awesome with honestly minimal investment.
But
So
for $75,000, would you
should
take
it
it?
be? So I'm gonna go ahead
Right.
and break it down a little bit. Like I'm not going to give them anything for rhino lining it. The rhino lining a vehicle is for something that is not nice, not a $74,000 vehicle. It's for a beater, but their choice. Quigley conversion, let's say we're at 17 on that. Sportsmobile conversion, let's go low end. We'll put that at like 18. Buying this van, it's a 2006, and it is a 1-ton. I'm not super up on the prices of these vans, but I would certainly say he's at less than 20 there. So if you start kind of adding,
so Coy, I can speak on this one. I've seen vans just like this for $8,000, 8 to 12.
okay, so we're getting close to the $50,000 mark. Like you start adding all this hardwood and the build out. While it's not perfect, that's still if you just took that to any woodworker or cabinet maker and had them do that, I mean that's a couple grand at minimum, if not
Oh, yeah, a lot, yeah,
$10,000.
a lot more than
So,
that.
Bundy Tech awning, what do you think?
Off the top of my head, I think those are like $1,200. They're not cheap.
Okay.
Maybe they're 800. But that part, it's a used awning. I mean, the cheap ones aren't even that much worse than the super nice ones nowadays. So I just don't see where his price is coming from.
I can tell you why.
Honestly.
I can tell you exactly where it's coming from. It's coming from COVID. It's coming from people that have potentially expendable money because they haven't been able to travel for the last 2 years. People that want to sell their house and get the hell out of Dodge. I can tell you that he would probably command this price.
You think so?
I think so. It's literally a turnkey, like buy and run. And so, I mean, I've looked at
hope he does. I'm happy for him if he does. But in my mind, I'm like, I can go buy a used ambulance, probably diesel. It's going to have more space with the box on it. I can 4x4 swap this. Sure, I won't get to say it's Quigley's, but I'm going to do that for 10 grand. I mean, I start kind of adding up what you could do yourself and pay to have done, I feel like you could get something that would honestly be better than this for a fraction of the price. But as you mentioned, it's not turnkey. That stuff I'd have to
I was
do.
just going to say, like, you've got the time, the effort, the research, the sourcing, and the different people to pull together, and also the tools. If you don't have all the
skill
tools,
level, absolutely not
so,
everybody
and the skill,
wants
yeah,
skills
exactly,
either.
and the skill, and I can tell you right now, somebody's definitely been thinking, not necessarily on the door accoutrements, but just in the drawer systems and some of the other things that I've seen. There has been a lot of thought put into this, whether it's stuff we don't, necessarily agree with. That might be something, but there's been a lot of work that's been put into this van, whether we like it or not. So that does go for some cost, yeah.
If I may, what we're talking about is the difference between the mechanically inclined car guy that wants to do the work himself and the tech bro that has the money, but doesn't know what they want exactly. So now that we've talked this through, I guess maybe I need to get rid of the whole idea of, where it's located, because anybody can get this from anywhere. You guys, as a matter of fact, what was it? The 25th of May or the 23rd of May, you posted on your Facebook that you've had your Delica for 2 years, and you went to Florida. You flew to Florida and then drove it back, right?
Yes. And Kellen Carr, now actually I just talked to him today via text, from Carr Automotive and Good Karma. He's a Delica and importer, and then Carr Automotive is kind of his mechanic shop that he has. And he's become a good friend. And yeah, it was May 25th. We had it for 2 years, and we bought it basically sight unseen. And he was instrumentally awesome to be able to work with. I mean, we're like, oh, well, during COVID, right when it first started, we're like, do we want to do this? How do we do this? And he just gave us all the videos, anything we asked for, took measurements. I mean, he took so much in his own hands and said, I'm so excited for you guys to come over and check this out. He even measured the whole back with the seats forward and took videos and said, yes, your inflatable pad that we have a big Agnes, like 4-inch pad. This is going to fit, and this will work and everything. And he fixed everything, and he just went through and actually did a tune up on it. And even got us a first aid kit, because we were going to fly with all of our camp gear and then drive it back and sleep in the van, which we did on the way back. And so he's just, I mean, I can't say good enough things about him. And so we ended up buying an engine for our white Pajero from him, and we've steered a lot of people to him because he's just one of a million. But yeah, it was May 25th, 2 years.
And speaking of, this does have a first aid kit right by the side door. So, I mean, that's got to account for something, right?
And
That's
honestly,
it. I was wondering, I'm like, that can't be an extra jerry can. Why would you have one inside? I couldn't quite see.
And who knows? Maybe it's a switch panel. I don't know, but it looks like a first aid kit.
It needs a Pelican sticker for sure. Then we'd know.
Yes.
I need to, if you make them, I need one of those mailed to me, one of those Pelican stickers.
Done and done. I can do that. So here's what I'm hearing, you guys. And again, this is a little bit out of my wheelhouse, but it's in both of your wheelhouses. So here's, if I can quickly summarize this. It sounds like you could probably replicate this build for around 60,000, but then you also have to put all of the labor into installing everything and making sure that it all fits, and you have to be mechanically inclined enough to do that. And if you had to pay a shop to do it, then you could easily get up to that $75,000 mark. Am I hearing that correctly?
Yeah.
It's tough. I still think even if you're paying a shop to do this, I think you could get this done for less. The woodworking, I mean, I don't know the whole level of everything. Like, it's a nice build.
Right.
Like, he's got a lot of nice stuff, but that still
Yeah.
seems like I could recreate this pretty much exactly the same. Maybe a little, a few little things different here and there that I would like to change, but I feel like I could recreate it for less. Maybe not a lot less, but I feel like I could recreate this for 60.
Well, and I
Just me
guess for
personally.
me, it's the time, the expertise, the materials, especially the materials. With the wood, oh my God, we just re-roofed our house. We needed 17 pieces of sheathing, 4x8 plywood. Each
I'm so
one was like
sorry.
over $100. It
Yeah.
was like almost $2,000 just for 17 stupid sheets of plywood. But looking at this now, it's like, I think for that's got to say something. For something that specializes, has got to be the right owner. But then again, stuff is so crazy. The times are so crazy right now with people that just want to get out. It's like off-road trailers and rooftop tents and all that type of stuff is massively huge. And just people are still continuing to get into this, whether you call it overlanding or car camping or adventuring or whatever. There doesn't have to be a label necessarily with it, but this engine is just a huge monster moving forward with more people getting in it. So I think you'd get it.
Yeah. And so I don't want to say that I think he's going to sell it for this much, but it's likely that I think that he will, or really close to it. I mean,
Right.
there's always some wiggle room, but man, it almost saddens me. Can I say this is a deal? In good conscience, even if people are clamoring to buy this, I can't say this is a good deal just because there's a high demand for it.
Yeah.
Right. Right.
So,
But I think it's what the market will bear.
Yeah.
And before,
Do we think it's a good deal? Not sure, but will the market bear it? Could be a totally different story.
Somebody will buy it.
okay, so Mercedes, you're touching on actually the kind of the essence of the deal dube. One of the things that we do on this program is we obviously say is a deal is a dube, and there's some flexibility there. But what we really actually need to know is, one, how much would you pay for it? And two, how much do you think they're actually going to sell it for? So with that in mind, can you give us your two numbers?
Corey, do you want to go first?
I will happily go first. He's asking 74.9 for it. Anytime you post a price, you got some wiggle room, and at this price, somebody's going to walk up and be like, "Look, I got 70 grand cash."
Right.
You'll be a fool to say no, and that's a nice even. That's what somebody's going to offer him, and he's going to say yes. So I think it's going to sell for 70. It hurts me to say that out loud, but still, that's what he's going to give for it, in my opinion. If this is sitting in my neighbor's yard with a for sale sign, the price it has to be for me to go buy it, it's tough because this isn't really what I want, but I know these do sell a premium. So honestly, at 30,000, I have to own it because at minimum, I know I can turn around. I know for a fact I can turn around and sell this for 45 or 50.
Yeah.
Like, no matter where in the States I'm in, even if the economy turns a little bit, like, I can get 50 out of this for sure. So at 30, I cannot, 35 even, I don't think I can look away. I have to buy it, even if I'm just flip it. That's me.
This one's a tough one for me because while I don't know the market all that well, I mean, I think I'm pretty much with Coy. I think if he's in the right market and he catches the right buyer, I could see this going for 72 or 73.
Right.
Now that I've talked with you guys, kind of talked through this whole thing, my buy it now price, gosh, my buy it now price is totally unrealistic. It would be like 20,000. And the only reason why I say that is because our full size 36 foot with two gigantic slide out motorhome, and I understand like my motorhome's not 4-wheel drive, it's not a van, it's not going to get me down the trails, okay? But we have a perfectly livable motorhome that we're getting ready to sell, by the way, and we paid 40,000 for it. And so when I look at something like this at 75,000, if I'm looking at it from a strictly I'm going to travel somewhere and then stay in it for a little while, I just don't, I have a hard time wrapping my brain around it. You know what I mean? And so I know this is a super low number, and I understand that this is totally unrealistic, but I think I'm going to stick with 20. That would kind of be my bottom line. Like if I saw this parked somewhere and I just simply could not pass it up, the simply could not pass it up would start at about 20. Um, just simply because when I look at something like this and then I look at an RV, I'm not going to be taking an RV up, Moab canyons. But with something like this, where when you make something that's livable, perfectly livable, in my mind, it decreases the likelihood of you actually taking it on those hardcore off-road circuits. And when you start talking about purely, what can you tow with it and stuff like that. So it's my whole thing is skewed, and I don't want it to skew your opinion, Mercedes, but for me, that's kind of where I'm at. But then talking to you guys and based on where the market is and how much all this stuff costs, yeah, I think he's probably going to get 72, 73, not the full 75. But yeah, I would have to pass on this. It's just not, as much as I love these, and I do. We talked about this before the show, Mercedes. I love these. I think they're super cool, but the kind of prices that they're fetching right now, I just can't do it. So,
Right.
There you go. Now you're up to bat.
You know, Andy can attest to this. I drive a really hard bargain. So when it comes to anything that I want to bargain down or try to go back and forth on pricing, I can be pretty tough. Would I pay 75? I wouldn't. I can respect everything that's been put into this. I can understand, especially if it's a functional quickly conversion, and it's vehicle, does it have higher miles? If it was maintained, I think 100 and what 25,000 or what say you isn't that much, especially for 2006. So it has some really nice accoutrements to it. So I think that if I got up to it and I saw everything was as quality as it kind of sees, looks like it might be with a 2 by 1.5 inch square thumbnail that I'm looking at right now, if I had to have a buy now price and I just had to have it, I just don't pay that much for vehicles. I'd probably say 40s, maybe at the 50s at the absolute max if I had that kind of money to spend. 75, I think he's just going really for top dollar because he thinks he can get it, and he probably will. But I think that just with the vehicle itself, I think with the Sportsmobile, pop top, the Quigley conversion, the KO2 is not like, tires are still tires, but tires are still, 1,000, 1,500, depending on what you got. And bumpers front and rear, I don't know whose bumpers those are, but all those types of things, even though they are used, they are still an upgrade for a vehicle. So I guess that's my take.
Yeah. So am I hearing you right? You figure he's probably going to get right at what he's asking.
I think given the market and given how insane everything is, and especially since it's literally turnkey, and if somebody just has the money, and if they're, somebody that's just, and I don't want to say like, oh, trust fund baby or this or that or whatever, but if somebody's got the money, no matter if they're older, if they're younger, whoever it may be, and just wants to get out there and have a fun play toy that has 4x4 capability, I think that, this would be it. And if they just don't know any different, or even if they do, I think that they can easily change some things out like we pointed out and make a go of it and be successful.
If you look at the price of 4x4 converted Sprinters or even the Volkswagen 4x4 vans, their name is escaping me now.
Vanagons.
Vanagons, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
The prices, I haven't seen a Vanagon for this much, but they go for, you see them for 50 all the time, which just explodes my brain. So
more. Oh yeah.
He's in the ballpark of a lot of this stuff. So his price is insane to me, but if I owned this, would I ask somewhere in this realm? Probably.
I'm a stickler for detail, and I think a lot of it comes from my design in my construction background, right? I mean, I just you have to be, right? You have to look at the functionality, the usability, and the design aesthetics and how it works. And I find it interesting, and just to get off topic for 2 seconds, when Andy and I review a vehicle together, he has a completely different take on a vehicle. I might look at tactile knobs and the layout of certain things and this, and he might not look at all at any of that type of stuff, but he sees other things that I don't.
Mhm.
So I come from a completely different perspective of me saying, oh, okay, well, this and this and this, but so my brain works in different ways with that. But, I think that that is one thing that kind of makes us unique in that fact, because I see things differently. And, but then I also miss things too that Andy sees. So I think from the usability aspect here, there's definitely things that I would change, but there's just a lot of weight that I see sitting there. So it would be
Right.
interesting to see how that thing lumbers down the highway.
Well, there you have it, you guys. I mean, is it a deal? Is it a do? We're kind of begrudgingly saying that it's probably in the ballpark of where it needs to be, but none of us really have the stones to call it a deal, because it's kind of not a deal, but it's within the realm of where someone is going to pay it. Of course, we're just a bunch of car people talking. So if you know better than we do, is it a deal? Is it a do? We want to hear from you guys. We want to get that feedback. Please do let us know. But for right now, that is our Smoking Dealer Smoking a Doob of the week.
Smoking deal or smoking a doobie.
That's a really interesting one to leave off on, you guys. And Mercedes, you're probably seeing why I didn't want to do the Delica, because it would turn that into like a 3-minute conversation, because you would just layer us with knowledge, and we wouldn't be able to argue back, because obviously you guys know what you're talking about, and Andy would get in the comments and let us know if we were on the right track or not, and we would be done instantly. But something like this, it's a little bit more it's a little bit more nuanced. You look at the
Right.
build, and with stuff like this, it's just so personal. And there's a part of this where I look at these things, and I don't know if these could ever be 100% done turnkey for someone. I feel like they're always going to do something, with the RV and the motorhome life. The common trope is you need to be a mechanic. You need to be able to
Mhm.
fix these things yourself, and you need to be able to customize them yourself. So, like our motorhome that we have in the bathroom, in the toilet area. It's not the bathroom, but the toilet area is separate from like the shower and the sink, right?
Mhm.
But the person that owned us it previous to us installed custom cabinets in the bathroom, and it didn't originally come with that. But boy, we were happy to have it, because it made it so much more livable, and that
Mhm.
customization is kind of a, a key, but it's not the same for every single person. There are things in
Right.
my motorhome, my 36-foot Winnebago, it is so perfectly livable, and we love it, and I'm going to be so sad when it's gone. But at the same time, there are things that I would do differently to it. I mean, there are modifications that I would make if we hadn't planned on only living in it for a few months. If we'd planned on being in it for years, there are lots of things that I would change. And so it's hard for me when I look at these overland builds, because it may be perfect for whoever was building it for where they are in their particular situation, but it's not going to be perfect for the person that buys it and drives it across country, because
Right. Right.
their situation is going to be totally different. And so it's really hard with some of these things. Well, let me take that back. It's difficult unless you see someone that built a Sprinter van to live in, and then they went bankrupt and they have to get rid of it right now. So it's like $15,000. Obviously, you just buy that and do whatever you want to it.
Right.
But it's just an interesting thing to kind of look at and think about, and that's what I appreciate about this segment that we do. And I'm really glad that you were able to stick around and do all of this with us. You've been
Yeah, for sure.
amazing guest. Thank you so much for being here. One more time, I mean, people can find you over at crankshaftculture.com. Obviously, all of the different articles that you've written, your own personal social media, Mercedes Lilienthal. It's literally just facebook.com/Mercedes Mercedes Lilienthal. They can come and see everything that you're doing, connect with you on a personal basis, which,
Right.
by the way, is something that I think is very cool. Someone of your standing, someone who has done as much as you have, and people can literally just find you on Facebook and talk to you. I mean, that's one of the coolest things ever.
I think for me, there are so many talented people out there, and so many people that I strive to do even a 20th of what they have done in their lifetime. I'm just me. I just am going about my daily life, and so is Andy. But we want to live for the now. We want to live and just travel and experience what we can while we physically and mentally can, and be able to share that with the world in a capacity that hopefully might inspire people and make people think, and hopefully they might be able to switch things up and just say, hey, well, I might be able to do that, or maybe I need to try a new job, or this or that or whatever. So I myself don't feel like I'm any type of a specific stature or any of that type of thing. I just feel like I'm myself, and I am a little, small town girl from central Wisconsin that, with parents that were immigrants that came over and didn't know a word of English. But, they made their life, and then I'm making my life. And, we don't know where we're going to be at in the next 1 week, 5 years, 10 years, 50 years, but for me, I'm an open book. So if anybody wants to say hi or whatever, I mean, yeah, Crankshaft Culture, our blog site, any other related social media, hit us up in the Facebook community, because it's a very active and fun community. Anything goes as far as vehicle related, mopeds, all that type of stuff, and just even adventure people. So we love people. So it's just fun. And I am very humbled and grateful to everybody that was a mentor to me and continues to be my supporters and just audience. And if people say, hey, check this out or that or whatever, I just am always open, and always open ears to talk with people.
I love that. Thank you so much for being here and doing that. We really, really do appreciate it. And we're closing up the show, but please do stick around. We'll talk to you after the show. Coy, where can people find you, my friend?
You can find me on Facebook, and do we have an Instagram now? Anyways.
We have an Instagram. I don't do anything with the Instagram. You really need to step it up, bro.
Okay. Anyways, you can find me on Facebook and Instagram at the Horsepower Hour page and group. Shoot me a message. I will get right back to you. I love interacting. So please do that.
And
Awesome.
by the way, it's facebook.com/the horsepower hour. The group is, of course, facebook.com/groups/the horsepower hour. Please do come and check that out. I can hear one of my foster kittens outside of my door crying at me. So this is the perfect time to wrap up. We want to thank you guys for tuning in. We want to thank you for telling a friend about the podcast. It really is what keeps the wind in our sails. And we cannot tell you how much we appreciate you doing that. Mercedes, cannot tell you how much we appreciate having you on. Again, this is literally just part one. We're going to be doing a part 2 and a part 3 in weeks to come. And we do thank you so much for being here. Coy, always appreciate you, my friend. Thank you so much. And you guys out there, of course, thank you for listening. And for Mercedes Lilienthal, Coy Forticus, and Masterson, Junior Senior Esquire, this is Andy. We will see you next time.
Oh, I'm warm.